It's great to be here, and it's really interesting to hear about, there's something in common about the region of Fife is just north of Edinburgh, and it's known as the Kingdom of Fife, and people are quite proud to be Fifers. And I think there's something about identity, whether you're a Londoner or you know your place, is interesting. Because I think a lot of this is about a shift from being a passive consumer to being an active citizen, and being a bit more empowered. So I want to just say a bit about what we did, why we did it, what worked, and what now. As Tim said, it was a bioregional response to climate change, really, and it was consumer-led. And it started with my wife and I moved from Glasgow to Fife. So we went from urban to rural, and the first thing I noticed was that there was people growing food. There was farms, and food existed, and you couldn't eat any of it. It's quite an interesting phenomena. Food is largely invisible. So we decided that we were going to eat food only from Fife for a year and see what happened and assess it. And we did a talk very early on in the project in Dundee in a school. And we said to the assembly, we said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be eating food only from the region of Fife. What do you think it's going to be like? What do you think is going to happen? There was kind of silence, and a boy at the back put his hand up and he said, I think you're all going to die. So with that vote of confidence, we carried on. But I think what it shows is that, there is a complete disconnect. This little boy couldn't imagine any food being produced near where he lived. And I remember at our launch event, the TV news came, and the cameraman was there, and we were thinking, this is really odd. So I was saying to the cameraman, why are you here? What's going on? And he sort of chuckled. He said, well, you're eating food from somewhere near where you live. And that's going to be the news. What a world we have created. This is what we've done for all of millennia, and most of the rest of the world do to this day. But that was the news. So a really bizarre experience. And yes, so we did, for the first year, we only ate food exclusively from Fife to kind of test the region. And then as that expanded, we moved to the 80-20 principle that growing communities actually developed as well. Yeah. And the way that we grew the project, so it started with me convincing my wife, and we now have about 6,500 members, and they make various commitments. This is the 80-20 model that Growing Communities developed, which we talked to Julie Brown about early on, had very similar ideas. This is one of our...
Explain that, Mike. Do you all know this one? No. Do you want to see it more? This is the man.
Well, this is the idea that obviously you get what you can in your locality, but then there's some other things that you might need from beyond 20% that you couldn't possibly grow in your locality. So this is the hierarchy that they produced that I think a lot of people have taken on, and because it's a clear kind of vision. Also makes it more possible for people. So this is one of our younger members relaxing at our meeting, and our members essentially bought organic veg boxes, but uniquely they ate what was in the veg boxes, because I think what a lot of people do is they buy a veg box and then they continue their current shopping practices, and then the veg box goes a bit mouldy and they throw it out and say, oh, it's very expensive. So we had a crucial breakthrough in realizing that you had to eat what was in the veg box. And our members make 6 pledges, and they choose which of these they emphasize, and then we take a carbon measurement on the likely impact and publish that back to them. So we developed this model of having community lunches where people would come together in large groups and prepare food together, and then we would give a talk and share what the impact of the collective project was having. So there's something, this is really the DNA of the project, was eating together, people coming together in a social setting, a convivial setting. It wasn't fancy food, but people really liked that. People really responded well to that. I think there's a real problem in the environmental movement that we've all been domesticated. So our angst and our worry and our anxiety is all within our own homes, where we're recycling away desperately. And there needs to be some more collective action. We need to reclaim the concept of the public self and collective action. Very early on, we made sure there was childcare at all of these events, which completely transformed it. Because in the early days, we found there was lots of young mothers, people politicized around food when they have a baby. If you look at baby food, the organic, I think it's like 90% organic in baby food sales. So what we had was lots of bearded men talking about climate change as all the young mums disappeared, chasing toddlers about. So our meetings were transformed by having childcare. So we now feed back to the Scottish Government the impact of these actions by publishing our carbon savings. Like lots of people, we engaged in wild food and reskilling people. I think there's something fundamental about our disconnect and I know people talk about seasonality, but most people don't know where their food comes from, and if they are in a rural setting, wouldn't know any food. So I think the wild food movement, its revival, can be seen as kind of niche, but I think it's a sign of some reconnection that's happening. This is a project in Aberdeen, so we started to go national and work with community groups throughout the country. This is a community garden space that we created that we were doing. Like a lot of people, we connected through Apples and Orchards, and we've just launched the Scottish Orchard Collective. As part of this national work, we developed this program called the Seed Truck, which taught people how to grow their own food. Subtitle was Sowing the Seeds of a Better Food System. And part of this is about cultural revival, I think. This is a seed kist or chest, which has heritage seeds, and it's a kind of centerpiece for events that we hold with the Seed Truck. This is Ula, who made our smoothie bike. And this is a project in Glasgow. So we wanted to expand that beyond our region and learn these lessons and then share that. This is we helped launch the Tipperary Diet in 2009, and this is a project, a college in Tipperary. We also did a lot of work around publishing to celebrate food culture. So this is our perpetual calendar of what to cook and grow around the year. When we started the project, the response I got very often is, what is the Fife Diet? Is it 20 Lambert and Butler and a deep-fried Mars bar? And I think that's been slightly overcome, but I think we did start from a point of real cultural self-hatred around food. It was a joke. And certainly if you look at Scotland leads the ways in childhood obesity, diabetes, and all of the health-related indicators that you might have wished. So why did we do this? Well, we were primarily motivated by the climate crisis and what we see as a catastrophic failure of political leadership around that issue. We know the figures from the How Low Can We Go report by WWF and Food Climate Research Network. And I think in that time, we've seen some real changes as well. We know that food banks have become a mass phenomenon just in the last 2 years. And for us, this raises, in Scotland anyway, the question not of food sovereignty, but just of sovereignty itself, because the measures that were created, those food banks, are not one that has any political support. I think we also reflected on how food and the environment have been intertwined for the last 50 years. And if you think of Rachel Carson's seminal work, and if you think of the world's worst environmental disaster at Bhopal, what were they making there? They were making pesticides and insecticides and herbicides. So we begin to see this global nexus of the food system. And although we have this incredible literature that's coming out as consciousness is raised around these issues, that's very positive, our project was also driven on by the annual collapsing, dysfunctional food system that would drive people to want to know where their food came from, want to know what its provenance was. I mean, I think we have to be clear that provenance, because of the horse meat scandal, moved from being a kind of foodie issue to being really a mainstream issue. And I think in the last 7 years, we've seen projects like the Fife Diet proliferate, but also that's being driven by the absurdities of the failing food system. So just to finish, but what worked and where do we go from here? We created a food manifesto that was 20 ways to change the way we do food, and you can see it on our website. And that was to try and influence policy, one of your Ps. And some of them were simple. The soup test is the idea that no child should leave school until he or she can make a pot of soup for their classmates. We believe there should be a moratorium on any further supermarkets in the UK, and that they should have to make the case for why this will be a positive contribution to our society and our economy. We think we should replace the 80s right to buy with a right to grow that should be enshrined in law. And we do back the idea of a soda tax, which a lot of the health experts who often find it difficult to have consensus would say is driving childhood obesity. So do share that, and thank you very much for listening.